What's this? A coyote track! A coyote track! Oh! They're gonna attack in formation!
Grandmother lived out in the wood, half a league from the village, and just as Little Redcap entered the wood, a wolf met her. Redcap did not know what a wicked creature he was, and was not at all afraid of him. Little Redcap from Household Tales, the original fairy tales from the Brothers Grimm. If one were to believe the ancient myths, wild creatures such as wolves and coyotes would be considered evil, the worst of beings. It's a strange notion, for they are guilty of no wars, no pogroms, they've created no concentration camps, nor carry no prejudices nor bigotries. They merely attempt to live, looking after their young and taking care of their own, not so much unlike we humans. And so I look out over this wooded valley, not so far from my own homestead, and find myself glad, very glad indeed, that there is a coyote pack stable and secure back there. I've lived in peace with it for years. Never once has one of them even so much as trod onto my cultivated grounds or bothered my livestock. They leave me be, and I give them their space. And I'm glad to know that they are out there, and that together we can share this land. Because you see, coyotes are nothing like they're portrayed in the farcical opening to this video, though I know that there are some persons out there that believe that, or at least something like it. But in reality, they're fascinating creatures. Clever, loyal, devoted, family-oriented. We could learn a lot from coyotes, and they could perhaps teach us a lot about ourselves if we open our eyes and really pay attention. Perhaps we should start by venturing out to those places where coyotes prefer to dwell. Some consider coyotes to be an invasive species, but the truth is, they're simply adaptable. They'll make do with whatever they have. But like their cousins wolves, they prefer wild places. Places like this paradise I call my home. Winter and summer in a woodland like this, the coyotes can find all they need. They have no need to pressure those few farmsteads that are in the area, and they would just as soon avoid people and remain safe. So I can walk out here quite safely with my dog. He's a big dog, and no coyote would be inclined to trouble him anyway. And the dog is also well trained. He knows well to stay near me. He's a shepherd dog who lives in a wild place and is used to dealing with wildlife. But in truth, it's never been a problem. Will-O-Wisp, our dog, is semi-retired now, and never once have his services as a defender of our livestock, especially against coyotes, been required. This is, to put it simply, because the coyotes would just as soon remain in their wooded landscape, where they can find plenty of game and water and shelter, and minimize encounters with humans whom they recognize to be very dangerous. There are many good documentaries about the behavior of coyotes, but I find the best way to understand them is to visit their world and apply the skill of tracking to understand it on a profound and personal level. Tracking the coyotes reveals the landscapes they prefer to inhabit. It shows where they get water, where and how they hunt, the wild fruits that they choose to eat, where they're denning, and the health of their families. One of the more interesting things tracking reveals is their style of hunting. Coyotes usually hunt alone, feeding on wild fruits, berries, and rodents. But when there is larger prey afoot, this adaptable animal is quick to adopt more useful strategies, such as hunting in groups. These are the tracks of a group I found pursuing deer just recently. I picked up the tracks of a coyote pack. These are large, mature coyotes. We have one set here, We'll have another set here. That's 2. And I could swear I've seen these sets differentiate here and there. Here the coyotes were just starting. This one here launched into a lope, and this one here did a rotary gallop just for a short way. Yesterday there was probably water here and they were probably just hurrying across it because they were unsure of the ice. But I could swear right there we have another set there. So off beside the path we have a third coyote. They're moving in a group, and they're doubtless hunting. There are wetlands down that way, beaver lodge. You see deer down there at times, other small to medium-sized prey. So this is doubtless good hunting grounds for them. They're just being themselves, just doing what coyotes do. Don't worry about coyotes. I know a lot of people are terrified of them. The fear is absurd. In all of North American history, there's only been one probable death of a healthy adult. The odds that coyotes are going to attack a healthy adult, particularly a large male, that doesn't show fear, are just about 0. I wouldn't really honestly worry about a whole pack. I'm a little concerned about Will-O-Wisp, who's getting silly and falling behind, so I need to get him over here. Come here, dog. Come on, buddy. Come. Good boy. Wouldn't worry too much about Will-O-Wisp normally, except that he's getting older. Oh, yep, here we are, right here. Really good prints. These are excellent. These are excellent prints of a very large coyote moving in a rotary gallop. Notice the detail here. In particular, this is one of the best examples of how to positively ID a canine print that I have ever seen. Notice that white X right there between the pad and toes 1 and 4. That X is definitively canine. If this were a feline print, what we would see is a chevron like that between the space. We'd have the back of the cat's paw looking like that, and the toes up here, and the space in between would form kind of a wide X. But here, with the coyote, what we see is an almost perfect X. And that's definitive of canine tracks, unless the track is stretched because the animal's stopping on soft strata, which can warp the negative inside space. You're always going to see this. Cats have the wide X chevron. Canines have the true X chevron between the pads, which is the back part of the foot, and toes 1 and 4. Usually, when hunting, coyotes travel alone. For the most part, their hunting is more like foraging. They look for whatever is available, be it fallen fruits, grains, seeds, berries, rodents, the odd squirrel, rabbit, or hare they manage to catch. But if they're pursuing larger game such as deer, they will fall into groups of 2 or 3. However, their pack hunting behavior is not as sophisticated as their larger kin, wolves. It's more that this adaptable and intelligent animal has learned to use teamwork to get large game when and where it's available. What coyotes do in their environment is not too different from what humans do in their own environment. They live, they play, they find or build shelter, and they spend a lot of time looking for food, very much like us, living and playing and working to get the things that we need. The fundamental difference, though, is that while human activities are generally hard on the environment, what coyotes do is beneficial for the environment. On this day of tracking, we can see that the coyotes are out looking for a number of the common prey species that they prefer: squirrels, small rodents, snowshoe hares, the occasional deer if they can get it, and these coyotes that I was just tracking, acting as a group, were probably after a deer. They come together when they're going after game that requires some coordination. And also grouse, which are abundant in the area. It looks like here that at least one coyote managed to find his dinner. One of the benefits that coyotes bring to an ecosystem where they are hunting is that they keep prey species from over-reproducing, and have even been known to dine on pestering insects that are detrimental to crops, such as grasshoppers. When prey species over-reproduce, they use up their food resources and they become prone to starvation. And when their populations become dense, they also become prone to disease. Coyotes prevent that by keeping prey species thinner. Humans, particularly human hunters, don't like this activity because they see the prey species as for themselves. Really, coyotes will make use of any abundant source of food. However, unlike some human pets, such as dogs and cats, coyotes rarely trouble smaller animals that we would like to see more of, such as songbirds. When it comes to diet, coyotes are adaptable opportunists. If living in a wild place, their natural habitat, they'll happily make do with wild game, as well as fruits, nuts, and berries, and possibly certain fungi. But if circumstances force them to live in other habitats, such as agrarian environments, they'll make do with whatever is there too. This coyote, photographed in cornfields, was probably gleaning fallen ears of corn, as well as preying upon the numerous rodents that would also be looking for those fallen ears. But almost everywhere you go, you'll see coyotes engaged in this activity, keenly observing the ground, with their heads cocked and their ears perked, then jumping up and coming down hard. What they're doing is mousing. The coyotes can hear the movements under snow and under grass and weeds and brush, and they jump up and come down right on top of them, quickly snapping them up and gobbling them down. In nature, coyotes form a major control of the rodent population. One of the most effective ways to determine what local coyotes are dining on is to examine their scat. This is a fresh example of scat. It is smooth and glistening and moist, and indicates the coyote has recently eaten a meal of meat. In fact, fine hairs in there indicate that this coyote had dined upon a rabbit, or more accurately, given the area this photograph was taken, upon a snowshoed hare. And here, in this old and dried example of coyote scat, we see that this coyote had also dined upon snowshoe hare. Here is an example of old coyote scat that was re-wet in the field by rain. In this scat, we can see larger, brittle hairs. These are the hairs of a white-tailed deer. This coyote possibly hunted down a weak or sick deer alone, or it did so in cooperation with a pack. In this example of coyote scat, we see that the majority of the material in the scat is actually the remnants of berries. Through much of the latter half of summer in the north, when the berries are coming into their own, I find that both the scat of American black bears and coyotes is largely composed of those berries. But why would a predator capable of hunting more nutritious meat choose to dine on berries? Well, coyotes are not true predators. They're omnivores with a carnivorous preference. They would prefer to have meat, but they'll happily make do with whatever they have available. Also, if wild predators can get their calories through some other means than hunting, they'll often choose to take it. These wild animals, I believe, are instinctively aware that if they're injured, they're on their own, and they may well starve or sicken and die because of those injuries. Wild predators, in my experience, will go to great lengths to avoid putting themselves in harm's way if they possibly can. So if they can gain their calories by eating safe fruits and berries and other forage, then they'll do so. In this final example of coyote diet, we see the remnants of a deer hide. I myself harvested this deer and left a portion of its hide in the field. I will generally make it a point to leave as much of the offal and hide in the woods as I can, unless I need it for some particular reason, in order for the animals that need it to be able to scavenge on it. And a coyote has come by and done its best to lick this hide clean of the scraps of fat and meat that were on it. Ultimately, the story contained in the scat and in the spoor is that coyotes are opportunists, which is something we already knew about them. They'll make do with whatever they have available. Along with being adaptable and resilient creatures, coyotes are remarkably intelligent social creatures. They are good parents, and unlike domestic dogs, both the male and the female are devoted to raising their pups. While they don't generally live in larger packs such as wolves with complex social behaviors, they do tend to fall into smaller family social groups. These groups will generally consist of a pair of mates and their pups. And unlike wolves, which can be bigamous, coyotes mate for life. And the pups benefit from their elders' age and experience by learning through their behaviors. This is one of the reasons that it's really best not to kill coyotes, because the pups observe established adults, and established adults will typically set up boundaries that are in safe areas that largely avoid humans. If those mature adults, which will typically be the ones out hunting, are killed, the pups don't have any models upon which to base their behaviors, and those are often the animals that will venture onto farms and occasionally kill livestock and generally present unstable, concerning behaviors. Did you know that in all the history of North America, there has only been one documented case of a coyote fatally attacking a human being? And the truth is, many wildlife behavior experts aren't sure about the details of that attack. There are missing pieces, and it's very likely that it was misunderstood. But even if the details were exactly correct and a small group of coyotes had aggressed a person, what it would mean is that your odds are astronomically greater by many orders of magnitude of being killed in an auto accident, or dying while drowning, or being struck by lightning, or being perhaps killed by a vehicle crashing through your roof and falling on top of your head. So why do people hold such an irrational and huge terror of this relatively harmless animal? Now, I know that statement is going to lead to commentary, either here or on one of my social media pages, from persons telling me horror stories that they claim to have experienced or that others have told them they've experienced. And I'll say right now, present the video documentation. Don't claim it, show it. With so many persons out there these days carrying cell phones that are capable of producing excellent videos, it's very telling that videos showing coyotes actively stalking humans are so very rare, and videos portraying coyotes as aggressive against human beings are non-existent. In fact, I have poured over dozens of video accounts of persons claiming they were attacked by coyotes, pretty much everyone I could find listed on YouTube and on Google. And I have not actually seen one person being attacked by a coyote in any of those accounts. The persons have either grossly misinterpreted their coyote interactions. Oftentimes the accounts are simply clickbait. In one case, one person saw a couple of dogs and ran away from them. The dogs didn't even pursue him, and then he claimed the dogs tried to corner him and eat him. And in those cases where a person has presented some physical injury, it's been persons who had pets out, and they broke up a fight between the coyote and that pet and received an incidental bite. None of these things, though, are really coyotes attacking people. Coyotes don't have fear of other animals, but they are not interested in people. Often the coyotes were just wandering by them, perhaps glanced at them, and people interpreted that as aggressive. And in a few incidents, persons actually misinterpreted playful behavior as aggressive. One person going so far as to say, when a coyote acts like it wants to play, it's just trying to distract you, and the moment you're not paying attention, it's going to attack you. But when you think about it, if a person is going to interpret an animal's behavior in that kind of way, there is literally nothing it can do in order to be interpreted positively. In that person's perspective, either the animal is acting maliciously, or if not, then it's just pretending not to be malicious in order for it to have an opportunity to attack. In other words, we malign coyotes. In general, dealing with coyotes is a relatively straightforward affair. If you live in an urban area and you're a pet owner, keep your pets inside. The truth is, your cats and dogs should not be wandering around unsupervised in an urban area anyway. Keep them inside. If they get attacked and or eaten by coyotes, it's really your responsibility. As for you yourself, learn how to haze coyotes. The Forest Service in many places conducts classes in coyote hazing, and they're easy animals to frighten off. They really do have an innate fear of human beings. If you live in an agricultural area, your needs will be more complicated. Coyotes don't have an innate fear of livestock. But there are a number of things that you can do to protect your livestock, and shooting the coyotes is going to be one of the least effective of them. You could do that if you have a coyote that is absolutely determined to get past the other steps that you have taken to protect your livestock, but it really is the least desirable course, because if you shoot the coyote, you'll simply destabilize the pack, and that will make other coyotes' behavior more random, and no matter how many you shoot, there will be more, because you'll clear out the territory, and new coyotes that don't have a chance to establish human-coyote boundaries will come in and take over. The coyote-human war will be never-ending. More constructive procedures to defend your livestock from coyotes will involve things like strategic hazing and the use of electric fences. I myself own a fairly large farm in the Canadian woods, right in the heart of coyote territory. I've resided in this area for 15 years, and before here I resided many years in the Alaskan wilderness. I've never had any incidents with coyotes going after my livestock. And I attribute that to primarily that I just keep electric fences around where my livestock dwell. It's been my experience coyotes really do not like electric fences. Some persons keep livestock guardian animals, in particular dogs, and they can be effective. They're not always effective. Other persons use different strategies. One strategy that I've been experimenting with involves kitty litter. I have several pet cats, and I dump the old litter in the barn and in the stables where my goats live. And I find since doing so that wild predators are much less likely to enter the barn or the stable. Though I should add that coyotes are never among those predators anyway. Now and then, a weasel might kill a chicken, and that's about it. I've also started dumping that kitty litter in my gardens, and I have very few wild animals going in the gardens to eat the produce. My belief is, though I cannot verify, that the wildlife cannot tell domestic cat smell from wild cat smell. And since wild cats can be dangerous predators to many other kinds of wildlife, that wildlife will go to lengths to avoid those areas where they think wild cats may be. If you're out in the woods, don't smell like food. If you're camping, store your food away from the camp. Don't presume that you own the area and the animals will understand that. Make sure that your camp smells like humans and sounds like humans so that the animals can stay away. And if you happen to see a coyote, don't interpret it looking at you as an act of aggression. Coyotes are intelligent animals, and they will take a moment to stop and study you. That's all they're doing. They're just studying you. You're in their world, and they're curious as to why, and probably they're wondering just what lengths they should go to avoid you. If the coyotes seem to be unwilling to leave an area, consider that you may be near a kill site where they have food, or if it's sometime in spring to the first half of summer, you may be near a denning area. Try to give them plenty of space, and that way the coyotes won't be inclined to interact with you. For my part, I live in the woods in a semi-remote region. I'm surrounded by coyotes at any given time. Every time I go out in the woods, I'm out among them. Every time I camp, I hear them around me. I have no fear whatsoever the coyotes are going to be aggressive. In truth, I would love to get to see them more than I do, but they're secretive. They're not interested in being aggressive. They're not even interested in being seen. And it's a rare and lucky day if I actually catch sight of one, even though I can hear them around me and find their spoor often enough. Given how little danger coyotes present to us, it is strange how much danger we present to them. Every year, thousands of coyotes are killed needlessly all around North America. Coyotes that have no intention whatsoever of harming us. Coyote hunters often justify this slaughter on the basis that they're protecting people or protecting livestock. Perhaps sometimes livestock, the reality is they're never protecting people from coyotes. And some persons, they just enjoy being cruel. Not long after I bought this homestead, I was hiking in the woods and came across this. A hunter had shot a coyote and hung it in this birch tree. I cut it from the noose and left it in the crotch of the tree, in the manner of the aerial graves of some Native Americans. It was all I could do for the coyote was at least try to give it back some dignity in death. In this video, I had revisited the site a year later, but I have to wonder upon seeing such a thing, which species is the real villain here? I've never seen coyotes do anything like this, not even to prey animals they don't give a thought to. They simply kill and they eat in the same way that we might kill a chicken and eat it. It takes a human to display this kind of hate, this kind of fear, this kind of cruelty. It would be nice to think that we as a species can get past the kind of calculated cruelty and callous ignorance it takes to be this malign. It has often amazed me the fear and loathing humans hold toward those animals that are most like them, the animals that show care and compassion for their own, that have high intelligence, that are social and clever, animals like the raven, the wolf, and the coyote. Going back into ancient times, we describe these animals as wicked, malicious, malign. We imagine that these animals dream of killing us, that they are vicious predators looking for things to destroy. In far distant times, one could understand how these myths may have come to be. Long ago, at the beginning of history and beyond that, when life was more of a struggle, farmers in the early times often had to work hard to protect their small flocks from predators such as bears and wolves. But as time has gone on and humans have come to predominate this earth, there are so few of the great old animals left, and yet we still fear them. Perhaps this has come about because humans believe that the world belongs to them, And those resilient wild creatures who refuse to be tamed stubbornly remind us that is just not true. Or perhaps it's come about because of the innate human tendency to fear anything we don't understand, and to react to that fear with death and destruction. For my part, I think the reason that we malign these creatures so much is because they remind us of ourselves. They're intelligent, they care for their young, they're soulful. They do remind us of ourselves, except ourselves without the flaws that our human character brings upon us: war, avarice, hate, greed. These animals don't possess these things. They have so much of what we do without our flaws. Perhaps this is the real reason for which we must malign the coyote.